Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. One of the most important things that matters the most to Oakville is traffic. And here today to talk with me and you about traffic safety are two of Halton's finest, Sergeant Ryan Snow and Milenko Cimbur. And we are going to start with, I think the most exciting thing that's coming along is automated speed enforcement.
Yes.
I think they named it automated speed enforcement because photo radar is like bad words or something. Because back in the 90s we had it for a minute and a half, right?
Pretty much. I think the whole idea was how they're trying to explain it to the community as to what the benefits of it is.
Yeah. Well, it is the number one top complaint in Oakville is speeding on my street. You know, whoever the person is that's talking, and it's like. And people are at their wits' ends about it. I mean, people are really upset about it. And this automated speed enforcement has been sort of dangled out there as, okay, you know, here's your solution, it's coming. And what I've had to do is explain to people there's a lot of catches and conditions and restrictions, and we're not going to be able to do it everywhere, you know, and you know, don't get so excited. I'm trying to hold back the expectation's so big. I'm trying to say, well, look, come on, we're over appreciating this. Burlington and Oakville I know both of us are very keen to do it, and I know our residents are frustrated by the way, because they want it yesterday, and we're trying to thread our way through the thicket of the rules that are coming with it. I know people would be glad to hear that the police are, you know, for it if you are. Like, what's?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about the whole idea of camera enforcement is that whether or not you're talking about cameras at intersections or whether we're talking about cameras for the purposes of speed monitoring, the most important point about this to try to make to the public is it's never ever been about kind of that cash cow kind of perception that perhaps existed in the past. It's really about ensuring community safety. And what we generally find is if the community perceives it as there's some sort of sanction that can come along with it, whether or not we're talking about mandatory alcohol screening with ride checks, or whether we're talking about if I pull through the intersection on the yellow, that camera may capture the back of my car and I get a ticket in the mail, or it's I'm going down a road and I'm going to get a ticket for speeding. Those are the sorts of things that generally kind of, you know, they resonate with the public. And that's why it's important for us to be able to work with those technologies that ultimately will both benefit road safety, but at the same time, everybody knows they're there, so you have a choice in order to comply.
Yeah. My view is that the people who called it a cash cow are the people who had to pay the fines, and it was their way of trying to say, I don't want to be stopped. And all I can say to, you know, I mean, a lot of people are speeding. I can see it, and, you know, we see it all the time. Before we started taping today, we saw somebody get stopped right outside the studio. So, you know, it's become like your favorite sport, is to see how fast you can go. And I can tell you that the moms and not to pick on moms, but, you know, the residents that if you're a speeder that you're speeding in front of, they're really upset about it. And they want the fine to be $1 million. But they want you to be so sorry that you'll never do it again.
Well, I think one of the things that's also important for the community to understand, though, is that all of these tickets are referred to as owner liability tickets. So if you own a vehicle, think about who it is that you're entrusting your car keys to, because they're not the one that's going to get the ticket in the mail, you are. So it's a cash fine, no point supply, but the question then will be is how's your insurance company going to interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, I just visited one of my brothers. He's got an insurance, we don't have this here, but he's got an insurance policy where in return for always plugging in his phone to his car, it measures him on 5 different driving behaviors, speeding being the obvious one, and he gets a discount on his insurance if he's a good boy. And he proudly showed, and it tells you as you go, your discount is, and he proudly showed me, he's got an 11% discount because you know, I teased him. I said, gee, I noticed that you never go over the speed limit. What's going on? He says, I'm making money.
Yeah, well, it's a form of incentive, and that's what's interesting about it. Like you mentioned the speed, but it's also rate of acceleration,
Yeah.
rate of braking.
Yeah.
So there's these other inputs into your car that are measured, which what's coincidental about that is the police use a lot of those types of measurements when we reconstruct serious motor vehicle collisions. So we'll download the crash data recorder in your vehicle, and we're looking at your braking, we're looking at your acceleration, we're looking at when your ABS is engaged, and that helps us to be able to kind of assemble that clear picture of what led up to a crash. So it's really the same technology.
I'm not sure I knew there was a crash data recording device in my car.
Most don't until it happens to you.
So, like the airplane black box, the cars now have a black box.
Well, it's funny actually.
It seems.
The courts have actually commented on that as well. It is kind of like a black box, but it's a little different because it doesn't record voices in the car. So there is still that kind of privacy expectation, not as much as when you're in your home, but if you're in your car, it's recording what the vehicle is doing. Yeah. So you can infer that it has to do with the input of the driver.
Oh, and the airline black box gets the pilot's voices too. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it makes it easier for the police to obtain that information when we need it.
So, you know, the other part of safety on the road that drives me just crazy trying to understand is distracted driving, because the fines are immense. We've got some very talented officers out there in pickup trucks so they can see down, and bicycles so they can go right beside you, and they're on social media, and they're, I mean, I've never seen anything so publicized, right? And everywhere I go, I look out the window, people are still doing it. Like, what is it with this?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. Distracted driving is a growing safety concern, and it's one that we keep hearing from the public. And it is leading to more and more vehicle collisions. I think, well, it's a fact, you're 4 times more likely to be involved in a motor vehicle collision while you're distracted. And also, something that people should be aware of, that 5 seconds you're reading the text and you're traveling 90 kilometers per hour.
I know somebody who Friday night was T-boned by somebody running a red light at speed. And I've got to assume that surely they weren't intentionally, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knows if it was really distracted driving, but my first thought was, they must have been on a phone.
Well, another statistic is every 30 minutes somebody's injured in a distracted driving accident. So all these, the community concerns, the statistics, led us to create a collaborative between the Halton Regional Police, Regional Health, Public Works, and Paramedic Services in May of last year, and that resulted in Project It Can Wait, which targeted distracted driving.
Put the phone down.
Put the phone down. It can wait. It can wait, Halton. And that was the emphasis behind why it was called that.
Yeah, how good is the news you're getting on your phone anyway? Why can't you wait?
It can wait. I can't imagine news that important that you need to look at it right away when you're driving a motor vehicle.
It's too bad everybody's not old enough to be able to remember we didn't used to have phones in our cars.
Yeah. It is true. Like, it's, well, we were talking about it, just even, you're driving around doing your errands and you'll stop at a stoplight or you'll see somebody driving and you'll see them on the phone.
So let's talk about what the penalty is. And there's an opportunity when we talk about that to maybe illuminate, like, we don't just give tickets. Sometimes you just give a warning. Do you want to talk about how you decide when to give a warning, when to give a ticket?
There's many factors, officer discretion. There's many factors that go into officer discretion. Every incident is unique. You have to look at aggravating, mitigating factors in the offense.
And you're hoping to sort of educate the person, right?
Education is a huge part of a lot of what policing is, the majority of what policing is. Yeah. We hope to educate.
Or encourage, I don't know. Educate, encourage, something like that, yeah.
Start people talking. Yeah. Actually, in Project It Can Wait, that was actually our major focus. We utilized education through social media, Twitter, Facebook, news outlets, interviews, just to get the conversation going, talk to the people of Halton and tell them this is an issue. It's a dangerous issue.
So are you taking It Can Wait permanent or annual? What's your?
As it stands now, we're actually, and I'm glad you mentioned that, we're looking at the next phase. And the next phase, we're looking at March 2nd to 8th, potentially being our educational phase, where we start the conversation again. It should be ongoing, but again, start the educational. It can wait. Do not text and drive. Do not look at your handheld communication device, handheld electronic device, tablet. Put it down. Last time we used mobile signs, stationary signs, again, social media, just to start the conversation throughout the 2-week period. So right now, we hope that is hopefully twice a year, and working with our stakeholders, with public health, public works, and paramedic service, this is what we're building to.
But it's okay to, for fans of this program, it's okay to use the hashtag It Can Wait all year long, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anytime we can get discussion on the subject matter, I feel it's important.
So last year, as I understand it, there's like a couple hundred offenses written, tickets written, can I say?
During this campaign, we actually wrote 199 tickets, provincial offenses
pretty
notices.
close to 200, isn't it?
That's right.
And then, but some were just warnings.
Some were warnings.
And that's the, trying to say, it could be this, go forth and never sin again.
And again, depending on the incident and what occurred, it could have been somebody may have been reaching for one and said, yeah, you shouldn't do that, and again, it's that conversation with the person.
Oh, so that's like, don't even start, and because you only started, here's your warning. And the warning is don't start.
And it could very well be.
Okay, that's easier to understand.
I think it's important, though, that when you're talking about, trying to ensure the public understands what that actual offense is, though, is always get a lot of people to go, but officer, I'm not making a phone call, or I only have the phone in my hand. A lot of people actually now buy some sort of widget to attach the phone to their dash. And if you're actually seen by an officer where you're basically working the face of the phone, generally don't touch it. That's it. And for me, it was actually Safe Start last year. I stopped a gentleman in a very large Audi, had probably more technology on it. You could have probably launched the space shuttle with this car. And this gentleman still had the phone in his hand. So I'm trying to say to him, you have enough technology there that you can
hook up to your car.
Absolutely.
You can talk to your car.
That's it. And I mean, ultimately for him, that was a conviction before the court. It was a contested trial. And ultimately, it's a fine, it's points. It'll ultimately affect his insurance. And now upon conviction, you're also looking at a suspension of your license, which guaranteed will affect your insurance.
Wow. And people still don't get it.
They don't.
No, and actually during the campaign, I conducted a traffic stop and very similar. I remember it was traveling northbound on Trafalgar, and there the person is holding it right in front of them, and conducted a traffic stop. And no, I didn't have it to my ear. I was just holding it, and that is the education piece.
You guys had a news release the other day about somebody with a box of pizza, a phone. I don't know. I can't remember, but it was like it's like he hadn't left home.
It's fair though to mention that when you're looking at distracted driving as far as phones are concerned, I've been asked this question a few times, and people would say, "Well, but people have been distracted for a very long time," and to which I always respond, "Absolutely."
Yeah,
but
they've been killing people for a long time too.
For sure. I mean, that's the sad reality that we kind of live in. But when it comes to distracted driving, the charge used to be careless. So what we'd always focus on is if you're doing something in the interior of your car, and ultimately whatever that is interferes with your ability to operate a moving motor vehicle, what we look for is how that is manifested in, is your car staying in your lane? Are you weaving? Right? A lot of the things you would also look for impairment is your speed up and down. Do you hit the curb? So those are the sorts of things we look for. And if the person was eating a hamburger or drinking a coffee, that can still be sufficiently distracting that we can lay a charge. It's just called careless.
So what makes this so puzzling is you've got a program. The fines are amazing. There's no getting off on this. I have never heard of a case where somebody went to court and got off. But 700,000 impressions over social media. The signage that people pass, like 5 million sign exposures during the time, and still it's everywhere. It's like, this is like, people are determined.
Yep.
I'm not sure where we go with that, but
I'd make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Have that conversation with somebody who basically protests these laws and ask that person, would you drive across the QEW with your eyes closed? Because you know the response you're going to get. And if you look at it that way, if you're distracted and you're not paying attention to the road, your eyes may as well be closed. And so it's interesting how we view things differently. If I were to ask that, you know what the response is, but people will always still find a way to say, but I need to answer that phone.
hook it up to the car. You know, the other day my wife and I were driving somewhere, and I wanted to stop at Tim's and drive with a coffee. She said, you can't do that anymore. And I go, why not? She says, it's distracted. And I go, okay, hon. She's the boss, so I obey.
Yeah, it's still okay to do those things. You know, there is that little bit of an urban myth. Actually, at the start of this year, I received a couple of inquiries about that because there was something going around on social media about drinking a coffee being distracting. If what you're doing is distracting, it can be a chargeable offense. But if you can safely move your motor vehicle around, do what you need to do, and consume a coffee, maybe even have a snack, it's still perfectly lawful to do so.
I'm not going to tell her because it's not worth fighting with my wife.
No, absolutely. You need to go to happy home when you're done here.
That's right. That's
Very important.
as I say, my strength is obedience.
That's probably a good thing. I'll have to remember that with my wife.
44 years, you know, and you know, we're actually closer to 45 than 44, but to give you an idea of the discipline, she goes, you can't say 45 yet. You got to earn it.
The answer is yes, dear.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so distracted driving is not the only thing that we're dealing with out there to try to keep people safe. There's an extraordinary number of people drinking and driving. I say that without being sure of it because this morning I read just one press release and there were like 8 different alcohol offenses in this morning's little press release. And they were from all over. And man, that's amazing too.
It certainly is. You know, when we look back at 2019, we had some changes in the criminal code. The way the offenses are defined changed. We went from what was referred to as over 80 milligrams to 80 or over. It's a very, very fine differentiation. Probably a lot of viewers would say, why does that matter? And what it did is it opened us up to being able to lay a criminal offense for lower levels of drinking. So that was something that actually goes toward complementing road safety. We also had mandatory alcohol screening, which means that if an officer stops you for a lawful purpose, has a roadside screening device in hand, that they can lawfully demand a sample of your breath. And it's also a criminal offense if you refuse.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of releases where somebody's charged not only with being over, but refusing to give a sample. Yeah. And that's, I guess, people are pretending to be shocked by that.
Well, changes in the criminal code on that front, again, very much beneficial to traffic safety, is if you refuse, the potential fines, punishments, sanctions are just the same as if you, in fact, had provided a sample and blew over. So there is no benefit to refusing.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And every incentive, I guess. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when last year, what's interesting when it comes to mandatory alcohol screening, our roadside tests increased by 75%. So we had over 5,500 roadside tests that were administered in 2019, but the amount of suspensions went down by about 22%.
You know, this is a very interesting point because people tend to focus on the RIDE program, which is sort of a PR thing that gives them the impression that you're only checking during the holiday season. And you know, the number you just cited means you're doing it all the time.
Absolutely. We 24/7. We have officers out and about in the community, and our officers carry roadside screening equipment in their cars. So when we're out and about, if we stop you for speeding, there's a good chance you may be required to provide a breath sample as well while we deal with you on the roadside.
You know, another thing worth mentioning is you do a lot of charges that are citizen initiated. Mm-hmm. You know, the angry resident seeing the speeder who's weaving. When they phone you, they get it. They get results. You know, if you see that, you'll get action, but you got to call to get it.
Yeah. Milo probably can comment on the speed part. The one thing I
I'm
can
talking about the drunk driving.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's two parts to that, right? So when we talk about the alcohol impairment, I also work with the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the Halton chapter, and we run a program in the spring called Campaign 911. And it's that messaging piece where we're educating the community that if you see any sort of driving behavior that you believe puts you or others at risk, then the appropriate thing to do is call 911. Because we quite often get asked, should I call 911? What should I do? So that's something that we always try to tell the community is we don't expect you to be able to know what the difference between impairment and distraction looks like. Simply look at it from the point of, do you believe it could hurt you or someone else? And if that's the case, call 911 and we'll say thank you every time.
Absolutely.
1 in 3 of our impaired starts with a call from the community.
That's brilliant. I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things, there's a frustration loop that people can get themselves into because they don't call the right person. Instead of calling the police, they call their counselor. And I'm sorry, but your counselor does not have the power of arrest.
Well, 911, it's also something, again, a great kind of little piece there for the community here is if you call 911 on your cell phone, we will not charge you with distracted driving. Okay, that's also something we get. It's, well, isn't that against the law to use my phone while I'm driving? Again, we're going to say thank you very much for taking the time in order to support road safety. Pick up your phone, use it via your hands-free, but definitely make that call. There is essentially an exemption in the Highway Traffic Act for using your phone to summon emergency services.
Now, can every cell phone phone 911?
There should be.
I believe so, yeah. Even
Even
unregistered.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just building on that, we are incredibly lucky to have such an engaged community here, and we rely on that engaged community to, proactively do our work.
Yeah, thank you for that. This is the police force in Canada most committed to the Peel principles of community policing with consent, which is like a crucial thing to have a safe community. The police are the community and the community are the police. And when they interact like that and you call the police when you need it, but more than that, when you see an officer and you say hello and you develop a relationship, that's what our guys and gals are out to do. And as a matter of fact, many of our officers live here. They have the same interests that everybody else has in having a strong and safe community. But that engagement is the essence of a strong community and a safe one. And we've got the results to show it. And I can think of some communities who strayed away from the Peel principle and went for the more harsh, militaristic, just going to beat them up, and that doesn't work. That just generates more.
No, you're quite right. The nice part about working and living in Halton is, you actually you develop a lot of relationships. So when I have to go on out and do my job in the community, I also have that personal link to people that are here, and that actually makes it easier for me to be able to do what I do, because a lot of what we do as police officers, you can go off of, well, you need to do it because the criminal code says this, but it comes across much better if you can influence people, if there's that level of respect.
Well, when you do the car seat clinic, that's not a criminal code thing, that's not a duty thing, is it?
It's not actually a duty thing. There is actually some sections within the Highway Traffic Act that empower us to be able to do this. But the motto of those clinics is educate first and enforce second. And when I'm asked about that, it's quite simple. We're there to make sure that our most vulnerable road users on the road, of which about 20% of our population is under the age of 10, we want to ensure that those kids get where they're going safely.
Sure, but if I'm confused about my car seat, or I don't know if it's in right and I want my kid to be safe, I can come to your clinic and you'll show me how to fix it, right?
We can show you how to fix it.
You're not
And
going to lock me up.
oh, absolutely not.
Because the
And
sin would be just being dumb or not handy or something.
I've never ever had anyone ever say to me, officer, I'd rather take the ticket than have my child safe, considering that we're offering to help them learn how to properly install the car seat. So the one thing that is important here is that if you do need to go and access car seat resources anywhere in any of our communities within Halton, dial 311.
Okay, so when is your next car seat clinic?
Next one should be in May. We're still working on locations around the region, but we do them during generally the better weather times. We generally partner with a lot of our fire services, are one of our larger supporters, obviously with the Department of Health here at the region, Ministry of Transport, and a lot of community volunteers.
Well, I'm going to work with you to make sure that we have a big and really successful one, because I know Oakville parents, there are no Oakville parents who don't care about their kids. I hear that from them all the time.
Well, you know what? Great stat on this. It's that kind of call to action piece is generally about 3/4 of car seats that we inspect at the car seat clinics actually fail inspection.
So they know they're in bad, and they're coming for help.
Well, they're coming for help, and it's important to recognize those is that we just pull cars in off the road. So say, for instance, Holy Trinity Secondary School on 6th Line. What we'll do is we'll set up, almost looks like a ride-style checkpoint, and we can, by law, pull you in order to inspect your car seat. But again, it's about education. It's only if education can't be kind of communicated, we'll go to enforcement.
So that means that there's a whole lot of people who didn't put it in right, and it's not a case of people suspecting it's not right and coming to you. It's like, it really is like 75. You know, it reminds me of something, now young people never probably saw Red Green and his wonderful TV show, but he always used to close the TV show by saying, and remember, if the women don't find you handsome, they better find you handy. And you're telling me that 75% of seats, that's a lot of people who I guess are only handsome and they're not handy.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great point to note, because when it comes to that, most parents, I mean, all parents want their children to be safe, but it's simply either a lack of understanding of how to do it. But one of the best things that parents can take from this, pool noodles are your best friend when it comes to installing your car seat, because you can cut them, use them as spacers, because every car is a little bit different and you're trying to fit a car seat into it. And so we actually have a large supply of pool noodles at our clinics. People look at this and go, why is that all there? And that's actually what it's for. So when you see two big burly firefighters in the back of your car strapping your seat down, ultimately you'll understand that, yeah, it can be complicated, but we're there in order to support the community.
I think people would like to know about Road Watch. I'm sure it's like everything else. Even if they've heard of it, they don't really know what it means. Road Watch.
Mm-hmm. So online reporting, if you see something, and again, we rely on the community, you see something, report it. And you can go online on our website, haltonpolice.ca, and there's an actual section there where you can report whichever activity that you see. Be as thorough as you can, be as much information as you can. I personally get all the reports there, and I find it, when it comes to addressing concerns, it's one of the things I rely on, including online reporting with traffic complaints and traffic concerns. I read those reports, and I rely on those reports in where I'm going to direct my officers to.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. It's really on each one of us. We can only have as safe a community as we're willing to actually work on. And that means if you see something, say something, and call the right people. Call Halton Regional Police. They're your friends, they're part of our community, and they're just as committed to a good community as we are. Thanks for being with us. I hope I'll see you next time on Oakville Matters.